So, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night, whenever you listen to this. This is Matthew Bailey alongside Ricardo Medina,
Hello.
Julien Neaves,
Hey, everybody.
Sommerleigh Pollonais,
Hey guys.
and the one and the only CC Lilford.
Wake up, wake up, wake up!
Up your wake, up your wake, up your wake. This is a special episode of Retrospect Reviews. Today we're going to talk about a movie that pretty much defined 1995 as far as summer movie-going experiences. This was a movie that was on my radar from the word go. I was excited as hell to see this when it came out. And yeah, that was probably one of the most memorable times being in the theaters back then. I mean, 95 was a rather interesting year as far as summer blockbuster goes. But this one here is easily probably, it is the highest grossing summer blockbuster of 1995 and highest grossing movie of 1995, right? So let's think about that for a sec. Of course, we're talking about Joel Schumacher's Batman Forever by.
Yep.
Forever.
Batman forever and ever and ever
Hashtag
and ever.
back what?
Yeah. We're gonna get to that. We're gonna get to that. But
Get to the butt.
we gotta get to the butt of the bit, right? But before we start, quick rest in peace to Denny O'Neill. He passed away a few days ago, age 81. He wrote for the Batman Detective Comics and Batman Legends of the Dark Knight comics, which I've always been meaning to read, the Legends of the Dark Knight. I just never got around to it though. Maybe you could fill me in, guys, on if it's worth it or not. But yeah, I mean, he has worked on just a lot of DC material over like for decades actually. He even worked on a couple of in the 80s he worked on some Marvel stuff like Iron Man, Daredevil, The Amazing Spider-Man, and so on and so forth. So yeah, just acknowledging that one time, just acknowledging his work here. You guys are familiar with Legends of the Dark Knight or those books that he worked on?
I only know his Iron Man work actually. That famous scene with him. That famous one with the black Iron Man. Remember that?
Well, was this the first time you saw War Machine or something, or it was a totally new Iron Man?
Totally, yeah, right.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
Well, the rest of you guys, you're familiar with Legends of the Dark Knight or anything like that?
More with the Detective Comics, his Detective Comics run. Not so much with the Legends of the Dark Knight. I would have to revisit it to really remember.
All right.
I have not, as we might get into in this particular review, I am not the biggest Batman fan, so I have not read I've seen more Batman movies than I've read Batman comics, I would say at this point. Although he does show up in stuff that I do like. Like, I've been reading John Ostrander's Suicide Squad, and Batman shows up in that.
Okay. Yeah. All right, well, on the subject of that, just growing up on Batman, I might as well just give a brief little run through of my history with this movie here, right? So, yeah, from when I was a kid, I was a huge fan of Batman. And just as far as the filmography goes, as far as Batman movies compared to Superman movies, I love a majority of the Batman movies, with the exception of Batman and Robin is one, but that's more of, it's not so much a guilty pleasure. It's more of those kind of movies you watch with your friends when you're drunk and you're just cracking up on all the bad puns, the ice puns, which you talk about in a bit, right? And of course, Ricardo, your pick for worst film of the 2010s, Batman v Superman. That was just such a slog of a movie, so dark and depressing, and unnecessarily so too. But as far as the other Batman movies, yeah, I love them. I have all of them except for BVS on Blu-ray actually. Proud to say that. And yeah, I mean, compared to Superman, I think Batman was just always it is my favorite DC Comics character of all time. I mean, Superman is cool and dug the cartoon and all that, but I don't know. As far as Batman, I used to just pick up a comic or two, can't really tell you the titles. And yeah, once a movie comes out, I'll just find a chance to check it out. But as for Batman Forever, I was, well, like what, 11 years old when this movie came out. I remember the marketing for this was such a big deal. The trailers, you couldn't escape.
You forgot the part where you kissed the girl.
The real game begins. Courage now. Truth always. Batman forever.
The music videos for You Two, Hold Me, Thrill Me, Kiss Me, Kill Me, and Seal's Kiss from a Rose was just on heavy rotation on a little station called AVM Channel 4. I'll never forget that.
Yep.
And, just the imagery from the movie and the trailers were just burnt into your skull now. So by the time you saw it, you were just like pumped now. You just seeing all the visuals and you just hearing all the quotes and all the moments now. So sitting down there, me 11 years old, I just had an absolute blast, right? And just last thing I want to say before we get to your individual history in the movie. To me, this came out at a time when, we could kind of argue with the writing quality of comic books in the mid-90s, right? But
Dear
I don't know.
Lord.
Yeah, but at the time, though, comic book movies were a big deal. You know what I mean? Like we had, becoming a big deal, I should say. So, we had Batman Returns, which I didn't really appreciate back then until like I watched it a few more times, and that was one of my all-time favorite movies. I love that film. But yeah, from then, it's just all these comics that were just all over the place. So I picked up, it's like Steel and, Judge Dredd and Nightwing and stuff like that. So comic books were at a particular point in the, mid-90s now. So this movie kind of came at just the right time and said, look, guys, like we could take these flashy comic books that you just probably pass by in a bookstore or whatever, and we can make this into big budget films, right? So it's like,
Right.
you should kind of think twice about those comics that just kind of scoff at to say, ugh, this is kid stuff, right? So to me, this movie just came at just that right time now when comics just got flashier and more over the top. And well, with 90s movies, with 90s blockbusters, them being so over the top now, and just with each year, there was always some summer blockbuster trying to one-up the one from the year before. And I felt that, Batman Forever is one of those, right? So, Ricardo, what is your history with Batman Forever?
Yeah, it's roughly similar to you. Again, heavy rotation of Seal, Kiss from a Rose, I think.
Kiss from a Rose.
Yeah, for me, Batman, just being a Batman fan from the 1989 film, the animated series on TV6, awesome.
Of course. Classic series.
Yeah,
And it still holds up
Follow
really
it.
well.
It's still. Yeah.
And then
By the way, I actually don't have that on Blu-ray, but I'm working on that. I have to get the Batman the Animated Series box set and the Batman Beyond box set as well too.
Yeah. So it was just that hype, and then just going into it, I went to see this in a little small theater called Windsor. Saw that there.
Same here. Yeah.
And I remember enjoying the film. And well, the big hype also for the film in terms of the build-up was Jim Carrey, because he was like one of the bigger stars.
Right.
Of the early 90s, of course, with Ace Ventura, Pet Detective, The Mask, and I always remember that Christmas. I don't know if the movie came out before that, but I remember Christmas. Well, before Christmas, actually, same year in '95, we got Ace Ventura When Nature Calls. So it's like, Jim Carrey was on a huge role there.
Yeah, so he was like, I think, the biggest, highest paid comedy star at the time.
Yeah, probably.
Probably.
Like,
Of that cast,
I remember he had a number like 20 million a film or something like that, which was huge for a comedy star. Remembering him from that's just him blowing up as a star. Ace Ventura, which is a film I like, but it doesn't really hold up today because a lot of transphobia in it.
True.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The Mask is still great for me.
It is such a fun movie. And of course,
Liar is one of my absolute favorites.
Liar, right?
Yes. I was going to say that. And also, a little underrated film which I'll bring up later, The Cable Guy.
Right. Like that film,
which was his second villainous role.
When I heard he was playing the Riddler, everybody in their head was like, "Oh, that's the perfect casting." We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about if it was perfect casting. We will talk about that.
Yeah.
We will get
Anyway,
to that.
yeah, loved it, committed, saw it at the time, liked it at the time. If doesn't hold up, what, 20 years later, we'll see.
Yeah, we'll see. Well, I'm sorry, 25 years later, actually, I should say.
Right.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
All right. Julian, what is your history with Batman Forever?
Yeah, I mean, Batman's my favorite all-time superhero. Always
Nice.
huge Batman fan. Reading the comics growing up, Justice League and so forth. I love the original Batman, one of my favorite movies of all time. Love Returns as well too. So I mean, when Batman Forever, I was like, yeah, I mean, super hyped. And as you were saying as well too, I mean, the marketing was huge. I mean, this movie was everywhere. Everybody, I remember, I think at McDonald's, some fast food had some
Yeah, I think it was Burger King.
Burger King, yes, and he's like, and they use the line from the movie.
I'll get drive-through.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, as you bring up that, I remember KFC had the. KFC had the Batman Forever cups. Like I remember, which one was the one I had? I think I had the Two-Face one. No, well, I can't remember if it was based off of heroes and villains or just heroes now. But I think I had I think it was probably a Two-Face cup or a Batman cup, something I can't remember. But I know I had a Batman Forever cup and it was dope. But yeah, go on.
Yeah, I mean, I remember seeing it, and I think it was a good time, but it didn't have the impact that the first two had on me. So I was like, yeah, it is good, but I still kind of missing McKeaton, missing the kind of Tim Burton aesthetic. So I liked it, I didn't love it, and it doesn't hold up 25 years later.
All right, well, thanks for letting us know early on. Summer, what's your history with Batman Forever?
Basically, like what you guys said, the first thing that comes to mind is all the marketing behind it. Like Cece, I wasn't the biggest Batman fan. I was always more Superman, and I always preferred crazier characters like Moon Knight and that kind of thing. I like my characters a little twisted, but I loved Batman Returns. So, I was on board and too young to really understand that, okay, they changed the director, so some stuff is going to change. I remember thinking, like most other girls my age, Val Kilmer was very sexy. So I was excited to see him as Bruce
I
Wayne.
don't blame you. I don't blame you.
He still holds up. He still holds up in this movie.
It's like, okay, I'm for a sexier Bruce Wayne because I love Michael Keaton, but I wouldn't consider him sexy. And now
He's more grown and sexy.
yeah, now in rewatching it, oh boy, but we'll get into that.
Yeah, we'll talk about Val.
I do remember enjoying it in cinema for what it was. Like as watching it from a kid's point of view, it was colorful, it was loud, and it had Jim Carrey in it, and it had a sexy Bruce Wayne. So I remember coming out of it satisfied, but in rewatching it, well, as we said, we'll break that down.
Yeah. All right, so Cece, what's your history with Batman Forever?
So, I'm y'all making me feel like an absolute infant because I was born when this movie had already been out. Like I am, I think probably the youngest one here.
We're
old.
We're sorry. Yeah. we actually apologize.
I am 90. I am 96. This movie was like what, 94?
95.
95. Okay, so I missed this by the time I was old enough and I really started getting. By the time I really got into comic book stuff, we were already kind of into like the Nolan trilogy, kind of.
Right.
My first introduction to Batman was actually the 1960s Adam West series. When I was young.
Same here too. That actually was out when I was really young, actually, like in the early 90s.
My first Batman movie was the Adam West Batman, like Batman the movie, where it was like all four of the villains.
Fun times. Mm-hmm.
And
Shark repellent, though.
The shark. Robin, hand me down the shark repellent bat spray.
That never gets old.
No, that shit. And I watched more of that series, and then years later I borrowed in sequence. I either borrowed from the library or pirated both Burton films and the two Schumacher movies, watched them, and was like, okay, eh. But then recently, I watched the Nolan trilogy and both Snyder interpretations of Batman, and then I revisited before and was like, you know what? I think these are a lot better than I. Because I feel like grimdark Batman just isn't for me. Like, I objectively recognize Nolan films are well made. Well, okay, Dark Knight is well made. I will fight about Batman Begins and The Dark Knight Rises, whether those are good movies or not.
I
I
love
don't think
the
so.
trilogy, but yes, the second one, The Dark Knight, is easily the best out of all of them.
Yeah, I will easily just confess that one, objectively speaking, is the best. But Dark Batman just isn't for me. So revisiting these ones, all these years later, the first one is my favorite. I have the DVD and I have the Prince soundtrack on CD. I want to get it on vinyl.
Nice.
Friggin' love that. And
No,
then
the soundtrack is
revisiting,
great.
I
It's
actually
great
for
that.
this. Oh yeah, and then revisiting this film, I watched Returns, Forever, and Batman and Robin again, and I've definitely realized. And now I own all of those on DVD, and I was like, you know what? I actually love these a lot more than I used to think I did. Because I think I discovered them around the same time I was discovering the internet, so you couldn't go anywhere without like Bat credit card memes and stuff like that.
Right.
But then, so that was the context I had for first discovering these movies. But then watching them, revisiting them after realizing the Dark Batman isn't for me, I'm more like, yeah, these are pretty good. I will say my favorite Batman movie of all time is Mask of the Phantasm, easily.
Right.
Okay. Yeah. That's a great one. That's a great one.
But Burton's first one is a close second.
Yeah. It's a great film. All right. Well, just a couple things I just want to mention here. So it's ironic though that the with the anniversary of this movie being on the 16th of this year. The day before, the 15th, will be the 15th anniversary, keep up with me, of Batman Begins, which was the reboot of the official reboot of the Batman franchise. Through the eyes and lens of Christopher Nolan. I really dug the hell out of Batman Begins. It's not perfect, mind you. But I love how realistic, how the film was grounded in realism, quote unquote, right? I dug the cast. Just the solid actors they got on board. Michael Keane as Alfred. Alfred. Brilliant in my opinion, right? And of course, we didn't expect how epic the Dark Knight was, which is just a masterpiece in my opinion. It's not just a superhero film, but it kind of transcends. It transcends itself from being a superhero film. It's just a really epic crime drama, and just so much emotional moments in it. And of course, timeless performance by the late great Heath Ledger as Joker, right? And then we had the Dark Knight Rises, which, yes, it's flawed. I get that. A lot of things happen where it's like, but to the creators' defense, they knew right off the bat they could not top what they did with Dark Knight, and I felt that with the Dark Knight Rises, we could argue for days about it. It kind of made it sort of operatic, like, okay, this is like the final film, so let's make it as grandiose as possible. And yeah, whilst still trying to keep it grounded in reality, and for the most part I thought they succeeded, right? But the reason behind all of this with the reboot here is because even though this movie here, Batman Forever, was a commercial success, the sequel, however, Batman and Robin, was a bust, boy. And just to talk briefly about my history with that movie, right? I will never forget 1997. This was a year that gave me both Batman and Robin and Mortal Kombat Annihilation. Right? This is why I went into the cinema, saw these movies, excited, and just sitting down and just watching everything. I'm like, something not right here. Like, what's all these? Why Mr. Freeze throwing all these ice puns? Why he have wounds with hockey sticks, and why Batman and Robin have ice skates? Nothing in the movie worked. And just by watching it over now in preparation for this, it's a riot from start to end. It shows like the best and the worst of mid-90s summer blockbuster filmmaking, where it just felt like the studio was just pumping money, just throwing a bunch of money on screen. You could just see it burn right in front of your eyes, right? Then also, the fact that the studio wanted to sell toys. So, you had all these flashy, neon lit vehicles and costumes and all that kind of stuff, and of course the bat nipples and the emphasis on on the man asses and all that kind of stuff. It was just a lot. It was just a lot, right? So yeah, I mean the movie of course was a critical disaster. Critics hated the movie. But yeah, now you can kind of watch it and be like, yeah, this is like the perfect bad movie to watch with your friends and have just bear, just cracking up at everything that you see on screen. Yeah. So just quickly, guys, thoughts on Batman and Robin. Like, y'all were like going in with high expectations the first time and like came out disappointed, or you think it's like the worst thing ever, or it's just a dumb, like a bad movie to watch with friends and whatnot. Ricardo, what were your thoughts?
The problem is that Bruce Timm and Paul Dini kind of poisoned that well for me in terms of quality, and so to have Mr. Freeze, which is still to this day one of the best arcs for Mr. Freeze ever, to do that is like a mess now. You hated it, and I was a big fan of not Schwarzenegger, but like Arnold Schwarzenegger's Mr. Freeze. What? That never makes sense.
Yeah.
Like
And they had the guy. They had the guy. Well, sorry to cut. They had the guy just delivering one bad line after another.
Yeah.
Time to kick some ice.
Yeah. It's just nonsense. Sir. And then, but as I say,
the dinosaurs, the Ice Age.
Yeah. But the thing is, the Paul Dini Tim Bruce Timm version is so good. In fact, the only one that has beaten that in terms of good storytelling is the current Harley Quinn series, right?
Yeah, that's an amazing episode.
Yeah, exactly. So to me, it's like, wow, it took so long to top it after all these years on anything outside of the comics. So yeah, it was just a bad call. Then they went with Poison Ivy again. I go with them, but
me too.
Like, what the hell is this? It's our best.
They basically kind of merged her with like Burgess Meredith, and I forgot the actress who plays Elvira. So just came off like this porn star kind of character.
He can't.
Well, the thing is,
he can't direct female characters, I should say. I mean, I know he's a gay man, but still, if you look at what he did with Chase Meridian, which we'll get into.
Mm-hmm.
And then you see what he did with Poison Ivy and all the female characters. It's just a.
But he right. So now, like, they make all these weird calls. They decide to go with Bane, and it does this big, like, clearly this especially because the Schumacher films to me is more like a callback to the old Adam West stuff. Like, to me, it's that. Like, at no point I ever get the sense of, I'm supposed to take this seriously, and I have to take this as the serious tone ideas. Like, say, like the Burton films. The Burton films had a more serious tone to them slightly, but this now was like, nah, the man clearly catering to the younger audience. You know what he's doing in that sense, and it does work and is entertaining in that sense. But yeah, it was way too much. Just George Clooney didn't work at all.
Oh my god!
Just
I'm back. That line is so iconic. Eh? Hey, Freeze! I'm Batman.
I hate the Batmobile in Batman and Robin. I hated it. Like, I actually like the Batmobile in previous films, but this one it's way too colorful. Didn't like it at all.
It looked like a neon lit drill, like what the mole man from what's this show? Sorry, the Underminer from The Incredibles was using.
Yeah.
Oh my god, yes.
Yeah, it just didn't work.
Yeah. Summer, quick thoughts on Batman and Robin.
Well, here's the thing. I remembered, like, from watching Batman Forever over again. I don't know why I had it in my mind that Batman Forever was that different from Batman and Robin. It has better moments and some lovely art styles and stuff, but they're both super colorful, super over the top, villainous characters. Everything is cartoonish.
And I could actually argue that the villains were pretty much a carbon copy of what they did with Two-Face and Riddler. You know what I mean? You have a crazy
Adam West type villains, as opposed to more, the more modern take. And but the thing about rewatching Batman and Robin is that because I know it's this stupid cartoonish version of Batman, I actually enjoyed it for what it was. It's a bad movie, but it's a bad fun movie, you know.
I totally agree. It's a watchable, entertaining bad
Yeah,
movie. Yeah.
it's not so bad that I'm like, I will never watch this again. It bored the crap out of me. It's bad where I'm laughing my ass off and I'm like, I can't believe they did this, you know. But
You can't believe they spend money on that movie. But,
yeah,
like,
yeah.
wow.
My thoughts on it is no longer. I'm no longer angry about it. It's just funny.
Yeah. Julian, quick thoughts on Batman and Robin.
Yeah. Well, I remember seeing this movie in the theater and coming out, and everybody's like, "Oh my gosh, this movie is so much shit." And this movie has been burned into my brain of how bad it is. I think it's a cautionary tale of excess, where like, okay, more villains and more heroes, and they throw in Alicia Silverstone. I was like, okay, it's just just more does not.
Oh yeah, she was so bad in this.
Yeah,
Yeah,
who suddenly know how to use grappling hooks and just because, right? Just because,
And
you know.
I'll say Robin, Batman and Robin ruined Christopher Nolan's career. Like you can't do two bad Batman movies with two different Batman. Come on, that's asking for it.
True. Yeah.
You are the bad ingredient. Yeah, so I
You
hated
know?
it. I will tell you, since that time I watched it, I had no desire ever to watch it again, and I still haven't. I probably will make peace with it, like Summer did at some point. But yeah, I'm still angry.
All right, Cece, since you weren't fortunate enough to see it in theaters like we did, what are your quick thoughts on Batman and Robin?
So, both times I watched it, I went into it, you know, with the whole with the internet hate in mind. Like Summer is saying, like when you go into it knowing that this is a pretty dumb movie and not to take it seriously, and that this is not Nolan's Batman, it's actually a lot easier to enjoy. Like even the first time I watched my way through the Burton and Schumacher films, I laughed myself silly on Batman and Robin. Like like literally the opening. Like come on. Like the whole opening where it's like the montage of them putting on their stuff. There's like the gadgets, the bat butts, the bat cod pieces, and then there's the big dramatic reveal of the big flashy Batmobile. There's a moment of silence, and then I want a car. Chick
the
the
car.
car. And
That's
then,
why Superman works alone.
Superman works alone. Like, yeah, no. At that point, that's when I just started laughing and I didn't stop. And I feel like part of that also comes from my honest love, which I love for similar reasons, of the Adam West series, which I also find hysterically funny.
No, it is. It is intentionally
I laugh
unintentionally funny.
that series is peak camp. Not quite. I mean, it's and like the movie is definitely like it feels like a feature film version of the Adam West series, except Schumacher's leaning more into like the big neon theatrical camp. You know, something like it's more like Met Gala camp, kind of,
Right?
in its own way, which I love. Because this because a lot of this is Schumacher bringing his perspectives and his experience as a gay man and like his perspective on camp to a big mainstream blockbuster, especially and then you get that and the studio pushing for toys. Like the aesthetic is incredibly garish and ridiculous, but it's one of those things where once you've been watching it for a while and you've acclimatized, you kind of get used to it after a bit, I maintain. One thing I will maintain doesn't work though. Like I can't defend George Clooney as Batman. Absolute misfire. Like,
well, this is something that the problem with George Clooney as Batman is that he is playing the same character as Bruce Wayne and Batman, same tone, same delivery. There's no distinction. At least Val Kilmer have a little distinction. See what you want about him as a Batman, but there was a distinction between his Batman and his Bruce Wayne, though. George Clooney, same.
And not even that, but like, as both Batman and Bruce Wayne, his response to everything is the George Clooney smirk. Like every time, it's like he's fighting Mr. Freeze, the George Clooney smirk. He learns that Alfred is dying, the George Clooney smirk. Robin wants to run off and start his own solo thing, the George Clooney smirk. Poison Ivy's trying to seduce him, the George Clooney smirk. It's just the same.
Yeah.
The same. and also I will say this was my introduction to George Clooney, and I was convinced he couldn't act. I was
Right.
appalled. I was shocked. And then I watched
Right.
From Dusk Till Dawn, and I was like, okay,
Right.
now I get it.
That was my Eddie Redmayne experience because of Jupiter Rising.
Ascending.
Jupiter
Yeah.
Ascending or whatever it was. I did not think I ever wanted to see that guy in another movie. I was like, oh my god, this man is terrible.
He's so bad in Jupiter Ascending.
Yeah. Oh my god, that movie. All right, so before we get to Batman Forever itself, we have to do a little, just a little context. You know what I mean? Just the stuff behind the scenes. How the movie, turned from being this, from the gothic masterpiece that was Batman Batman Returns, to the loud, flashy, over the top, almost Technicolor version that we got with Joel Schumacher's Batman Forever. So, CC, since you know just a lot about the whole behind the scenes stuff, just give us a brief run through of the behind the scenes stuff, like what led to the movie that we're talking about here now.
So the important thing to remember when talking about Batman is how big the original 1989 Batman was. Like, I
Yes.
feel like I wrote a piece on this actually, but
Oh, cool.
yeah, but 89's Batman was like it was this for a lot of people. I mean, not especially like my generation and younger don't actually know this because they only revisit it as like, oh, Tim Burton made a Batman movie. At the time, it was
huge.
massive. It was huge.
Yeah.
Kevin Smith was talking recently about remembering when like people were going around with like the bat symbol shaved into their heads, and like there were commercials everywhere, and there was toy advertising. Like, it made in a year, like in 1989, a year that like was already stuffed with a lot of pretty iconic movies. Batman easily made the most money. So. And Warner has always had a complicated relationship, I think, with DC because Warner owns DC. And so they have always been the only ones to make DC content rather than like Disney only recently buying Marvel.
Yeah.
So but what this means is that there's a lot riding on these films. So the first film was more of a compromise, right? It was like Burton and the studio had to kind of meet in the middle on what this film was going to be. And Burton felt that it was an artistic compromise and was actually not interested in coming back for Batman Returns originally. The only way the studio got him back was the promise of more creative control.
Okay.
Yeah.
Which is why that movie was just so epic in my opinion.
Oh yeah, that's why it's so much more Burton, because Burton was allowed more creative control, and the studio kind of trusted him a little bit because they were like, well, imagine how much more successful this will be if we just kind of let him do his thing instead of having to like meet him in the middle like we did last time. Especially since Burton is not much of a comic book fan, so he always kind of wanted to bring his own spin to this.
Yeah.
What ended up happening was because of that, the movie is way darker than the first one, and it actually, even though it made Warner a lot of money, they got a lot of critical pushback. They got a lot of critical pushback from critics, and they lost a toy tie-in with McDonald's because of how dark Batman Returns was. So, but it still made them money. So so obviously going forward, they had to somehow balance this, because obviously, so another movie was inevitable. Like, they needed to make another one because Batman Returns did make money, but they wanted to keep the family audience, and they wanted to get the merchandising. Like, they wanted to bring back all the merchandising people that had been scared off. Enter Joel Schumacher, who at this time, because this is 89, this is like the mid 90s, and by this point he has made Lost Boys, Flatliners.
Yeah, such an underrated gem,
Down.
Flatliners. Yeah.
Oh, Flatliners is freaking. I love Schumacher's one of my favorite directors. Not gonna lie, I love the man so much. Like, he made 2 John Grisham adaptations because after Grisham saw his first John Grisham adaptation, he insisted that he do another one. Like, Schumacher, and when you look at Lost Boys and you look at Flatliners, he seems good replacement for Burton because his style is similarly theatrical and kind of gothic. But because the studio is pushing for more bright and kid-friendly as well, Schumacher decides that he's going to bring more of the Adam West Batman, which is important as well, because one of the things that apparently happened with the '89 Batman was they wanted to distance themselves from the '60s series as much as possible. They even put out an order saying that Adam West couldn't make appearances as Batman while they were promoting the '89 film.
Right.
Yeah. So they bring in Schumacher. They're going for more of like the you know, the '60s series and the Silver Age comics. And Schumacher, I watched a recent interview with him. I think it was the George Rose show, I think it was, where he talked about the process of making the movie. And first of all, he said he's a friend of Burton's and he would not do it, but Burton gave him his blessing to take the reins because Burton didn't want to come back. Which is why Burton stays on as a producer for this film.
Yeah.
And they lost Keaton because Keaton loved what Burton was doing, and he's a big Burton collaborator. I mean, like, even before Batman, he and Burton did Beetlejuice, and since then he have also he was also in Dumbo, which Burton did. Like, Keaton is one of Burton's other regulars, so he was not interested in coming back without Burton, so that's why they brought in Val Kilmer. But Schumacher in the Bernard Rose interview, which I highly recommend checking out, Schumacher talks about how his goal was always to make a flashy, entertaining comic book blockbuster. Like, because like at the time, like, it was a huge hit. It was the biggest hit of 1995. Critics hated it. There were so many critics were lining up around the block to just tear it a new one. And there was a guy who even went so far as to like go on a whole tirade about how Batman Forever was the kind of blockbuster that would lead to the death of cinema. And that kind of thing. To which Schumacher just kind of shrugged and was like, when did making a movie that audiences liked become a bad thing? Like, why is that, like, why is it bad that, like, and even like one of my favorite quotes from that interview was, don't you think audiences get tired of being told how stupid they are for liking things? Like, don't you think?
Right.
Yeah.
I give the man mad props for that. And I will say, to Schumacher's credit, he did have some darker ideas in mind for Forever. There's a couple stuff that gets cut. There's a lot of stuff left on the cutting room floor, including a dream sequence and a lot of other darker material, especially related to Two-Face. Because this is the man who had just made Falling Down. So
not to cut you off, I also heard he wanted to expand on Bruce basically struggling with the concept of, is Batman doing more harm than good? So I would have liked to see that, but again, lighter tone.
Yeah, and especially since the studio was so freaked by Batman Returns. So, and to Schumacher's credit, he clearly always had in mind that this was like a film for audiences more than critics, to the point where when it was clear with Batman and Robin that audiences didn't like that one as much, he has not only apologized several times and said that he was just trying to make a movie that they like for audiences and that they didn't like it, so he's sorry, but he even dropped out of doing a fifth one and stepped back from the role and went back to doing other things. I mean, and then followed up Batman and Robin with 8mm with Nicolas Cage. Which...
Oh yeah, I've been meaning to watch that actually.
It's not very good.
That movie made me feel like I wanted to take a shower when I got home. That movie was not an easy watch.
Yeah, just off that premise alone, I was like, I don't know if I should watch this.
I came out of the cinema feeling very. It's not a bad movie. The storyline of that movie was like the darkest thing I had ever seen at that point in time. So I was like, I was very disturbed by that film.
It's disturbing. It's nasty. There's a cut that even like as disturbing as 8mm is, there's a longer cut apparently that's even more so, which is intense. But yeah, which just, I mean, it's always one of those things. Schumacher, I feel like Schumacher needs to stop getting hate for these two films because he is, in my opinion, still a remarkable filmmaker. Like, especially like, again, looking at something like 8mm, which highly recommend, especially if you're like, it's the same writer as David Fincher's Seven. So if you appreciate that film, I would highly recommend 8mm.
Right. Okay.
But But yeah, and that is how we ended up with Batman Forever.
Nice. Okay, so without wasting any time, let's jump into Batman Forever, right? So just right off the bat, right, we could argue for these if Elliot Goldenthal, you know what I mean, who composed the score for this movie here, if his score is better than, Danny Elfman for the first two Batman movies, or, you could argue if it's better or if it's just as great. In my opinion, it's just as great, but I really do love the score for this, especially the theme song that that instantly sticks into your brain. And then, of course,
Right.
we have the really cool looking, but still 90ish, if you look at it now, opening title sequences, with the names like kind of flying through the screen, all that kind of
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah.
But
Yeah,
a dog,
they get computers. They get computers to play with for the first time. So
yeah. But a dog seeing the logo and seeing the Forever just show up and just hearing the horns, you know what I mean, in Elliot's score just blare, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know, it's just something about that just gets you excited now. I always remember
Oh,
seeing
it's
it for the
great.
first time, you get pumped. It's like, oh my god, it's here, you know what I mean? And it's really thrilling when you think about it, right? So right after the opening credits, we get Joel's rubber suit worship. And I don't know, like over the years, because I checked out, Sam Raimi's Evil Dead trilogy. I actually love, the trilogy. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
Especially with Evil Dead 2 and Army of Darkness. There was always this thing of having a character gear up to do something, and then he will always zoom in on a particular thing. So I'm wondering if Joel got the idea from Sam Raimi, perhaps. I don't know. But
Well,
yeah, here.
I feel like there's like it's something a lot of filmmakers are doing at the time with the kind of the flashier like montage and like zooms and things, because Raimi did it, and then I think the Coens did it in a couple of their films as well.
Okay.
I think at the time. But
Yeah. But yeah, here, you know what I mean, there's always like the zoom on the hands, on the batarangs and all that kind of stuff. It's way bearable than the intro that we got in Batman and Robin. That one, he just took it a little too far here, right? As far as the Batmobile itself, at the time it looked pretty dope, and still, yeah, I mean, it looked dope. It looked dope. I mean,
It
the
always
neon
reminds
stuff
me of a gutted
is.
fish. I'm sorry.
It always reminds you of what?
Like if you're looking at fish bones, I
Oh, you mean
I
on
can't.
the actual Batmobile itself? Yeah, I know what you mean.
And then the back fins wiggling while it's moving. I can't with
Oh
that vehicle.
man.
Yeah.
And then of course, to set up what kind of movie we're in for, there's the whole bit was like, "Do you want a sandwich, Master Bruce?" Don't worry,
I'll get drive.
I'll get right through. But
We're off.
Stupid line.
I'm not sure if it was true. Somebody, I think at the time, said they wanted the Batmobile to feel like it was a living creature. So that's why they had the like it's almost like its bones exposed or something. Like that.
Right.
Yeah, I think that's the effect they were going for.
Okay.
Yeah.
It looked cool. And I think it
Yeah.
looked
I mean, it's a very 90s like version of like what we got with the Tim Burton films, but it at least it looks way better than what
It
we got.
definitely stands
The
out.
nightmare that we got in
It's
Nightmare.
definitely memorable.
Yeah, it's way better than the nightmare that we got in Batman and Robin. Let's
Right,
be honest.
It's not as garish. It's not as garish and neon and flashy. It's kind of more colorful than the Burton Batmobile, which I will say is my favorite, the Burton one. But
Yeah.
the Forever
Yeah.
one is just like they had a nice little splash of color to it, and then
Yeah.
Here's the thing. Here's what kind of weird. You know, it's have two Batmobiles in this movie, right?
wait, what? I didn't notice that.
Just so. The one that gets blown up later on, and
No.
Oh, you mean the one we
No.
saw before, and then there's another one that you saw Robin driving, right?
That's the thing, right? Robin
Right.
drives. It have two different versions. It's like so weird. You ever notice
Yeah,
that?
yeah. Because I noticed they were the
It's
sort
two
of
fins.
the
It's two
bat
fins.
wings, but yeah, the
Yeah, I don't
fins, they
understand
look
what
like
happened
fins.
there.
Yeah.
What happened there?
I-
Look at
I-
that.
I don't know if-
Years old.
Well, and
It changes from shot to shutter.
because no, nothing happens. Sorry, just repeat that, Summer. Just repeat that.
Well, they had stuntmen driving all the Batmobiles, but Chris O'Donnell insisted that he get to drive it, and he actually he dented it, and because he hit it onto a curb. So I don't know if that's why they had a different. I have
Oh
idea.
no!
Dumbass.
Wow.
But yeah, you're right, Ricardo. Because yeah, all of a sudden they have these fins, and you're not noticing the neon lights of the sides of the Batmobile. You know what I mean? And they could have set it up better with the other car, but I'll get to that in a bit, right?
Yeah.
Speaking of colors, CC, yeah, speaking of colors, I actually like the brightly lit Gotham. Like, yes, it's
Right.
way different than what we got from the past two films, but I don't know, it's something kind of Technicolor-ish, you know what I mean, about it. Just, you know what I mean, the oranges and the greens and the blues, it's just so in your face there. There's something about it. I just like it. I like it.
Yeah,
Well,
no,
why
I will
work?
always. Go ahead.
No, why it worked is because it actually, well, this film is the first time you get the sense of actual Gothic architecture instead of just the aesthetic that we understand as Gothic. Because so you see
Right.
a lot of statues and
Yeah,
Yeah.
big
lot of
faces.
gargoyles.
Yeah, a
Yeah.
lot of gargoyles, a lot of that. Well, I don't think we ever got that from the Burton films. Not really.
No,
Well, the
no, no.
Burton film, I think the design for Gotham in the first Burton film is more like apparently it was more based on Metropolis. Fun fact.
Right.
Uh-huh.
Right. Yeah.
And then
A
like
lot of
I will also
Switzerland,
say
yeah.
I will always say I prefer Schumacher's design for Gotham over Nolan's because Nolan's just looks like Chicago.
Well, yeah,
Yeah,
but that's,
and I
that's,
think
yeah,
in
that's
Dark
it.
Knight
Yeah.
Rises, it was clearly New York, so
Right.
kind of a mixture there. Yeah,
Right.
yeah. So back to the show, right? So we first introduced, as far as bad guys go, to Tommy Lee Jones, right? Who just remind you all won an Oscar earlier for his role in The Fugitive.
Right.
So
Every
here's the thing.
farmhouse, every
Yeah,
outhouse.
outhouse, doghouse, whatever it is. That sequel though, U.S. Marshals, like why?
Yeah.
But
Terrible.
Fugitive is a classic, right? But anyway,
I like the client as well. I think that's why Joel Schumacher chose him too, because he did work with him on the client.
Oh,
right. I
Right.
haven't seen that movie in a long while though. Jeez, yeah.
Yeah, that's a
But
good one.
But here's the thing about Tommy Lee Jones, right? Like, I really like him as an actor. And admittedly, I like him in this film. I like that he goes into the role
I
and
thought
he
it was the
is
opposite.
so
I hated him in this film.
theatrical.
I
Yeah,
hated him in this film.
I'll
He
explain.
hated
I'll
He
explain why I
is
like
having
him.
a blast.
That's
He is
why.
having
Here's the
so
thing.
much fun in this
Theatrical.
I
movie.
read
I Go on,
that
sorry.
Tommy Lee hated. He basically pulled Jim Carrey aside and he tell him, "I hate
I
you.
hate you.
I cannot stand your buffoonery." And he
Oh,
is
no.
so over the top and ridiculous in this movie. He
Yeah.
gives Jim
I
Carrey
kind
a
of
run
like
for his
him.
money.
I kind of like how
What are you
over the top,
talking
but
about?
here's the thing, Here's the thing. What makes it work in a way is how theatrical he is, though. Like, later on, there's a scene where he's like, you know what I mean? This is like a standard robbery, cash, jewels, just throw everything over here. You know what I mean? He's just
Yeah.
so grandiose, though. Every time
Okay,
he's,
so I didn't like, I think, right, so if I remember correctly, Billy D. Williams was supposed to be Two-Face, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they
yeah, because he
introduced
was
him at
Harvey
the
Dent
Burton
in the
films.
first Batman movie.
Yeah.
Right. So I don't know what happened with that. I forget why they
Well,
changed.
basically, Joel Schumacher wanted it to be Tommy Lee, and what happened is Billy D had a contract to because Billy D took the role of Harvey Dent because he was told they were going to bring Two-Face in the next
Right.
movie. So what they basically had to do is Warner Brothers bought him out of his because he had a contract stating that is why he would have been in the movie, and they had to
Right.
buy him out to
But
get Tommy Lee Jones in.
Right. So
Right.
my big problem. So I'll argue. I find the biggest problem with this movie is Two-Face. Like I actually hate how they did what they did with Two-Face and
I
whatnot.
absolutely agree. I hate
Right.
Two-Face.
And the
He's
problem I
one
had,
of
one
the
of the big
biggest
problems.
in this movie.
Right. One of the big problems I had with him was that he was never two things. Well, other than him behaving the way he was, which I didn't like, but he was never properly established. They just had it in flashbacks, and it was like a video he was watching of how he became Two-Face, and he and
I'm
Bruce Wayne
going
had
to talk
a
about that.
relationship.
I'm going to talk about that in a bit. Yeah.
And you don't get any sense of a relationship with the two of them. And I would have liked to see Val Kilmer and Tommy Lee Jones as Harvey Dent together, and then you build that up, and then you make them thing, and then you bring the Jim Carrey shit after, right? That would have worked better.
Give him
The
a
movie just
proper
jumps in,
give her a proper origin story, basically.
I also
right?
feel
And the
like
movie just jumps into
I've never gotten the version of Two-Face that I've wanted other than the animated series.
exactly.
Right.
That's
True.
What I would say,
No,
like that version is still the best. It's still the best
right.
version.
That's the thing. The Tim and Denny, once again, Tim and Denny poisoned in the well because you had such a great setup with that character, and then all you have is just already have goons. You already jumping straight to him putting acid inside a safe for some reason. Like,
Oh
Yeah.
yeah.
God's boy.
I will.
It's boiling
I will. Okay.
acid.
Okay. In defense of Two-Face, the way he is portrayed, introduced, and like this entire opening sequence is pure Adam West Batman.
yeah,
It is.
totally.
Adam West
It
Batman
is.
done as a 90s blockbuster. Like the whole thing where like Batman's in the Batmobile and he's driving, and then Batman, Two-Face is robbing the bank. I'm on my way. And then he gets there and and Two-Face is there with his guns and his goons. And they end up in the safe, and then the liquid starts. And then one of my favorite lines in the movie when like they're in the safe or whatever, and then the safe guy that Batman's trying to protect is like, "Oh no, it's boiling acid!" And then
Yeah, I
like
love that
this
line.
whole sequence is pure 60s Batman. Everything from like the villain that's like, it's a very performative, over the top villain played by a well-known actor, just like,
Mhm.
and even like, in fact, it's like just like this typical bank robbery, because this was back when comic book villains always robbed banks, which they don't do
Yeah.
anymore for some reason. But like back when like they were always robbing banks, this was like so this intro is pure Silver Age Batman comics or 1960s Batman in that regard.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
it's
I'd
funny
agree.
that Cici would mention that because we watching the movie. It's like this movie is like just one Batman's 1966 death trap after another.
Yes.
Mhm.
Something
Yeah.
Right.
over ridiculous. I was like, oh, okay. It's like, yeah, I know you're going for an aesthetic, but it's kind of really pounded home. But could we talk about the Two-Face makeup for a second? Why does it
Hate
look
it.
like exploded melangen? It is.
Yeah.
I don't. I mean, I get the calm thing, but it's just. I don't know. It just
Yeah,
doesn't
it,
look
it,
for
it,
me.
it was
It's
silly
just
back
no.
then. It
Oh
still
yeah.
is silly.
It
But
was
Never serious.
Archie kind of dug how the clothes he had on. You know what I mean? How different sides. Well, both sides were different. You know what I mean? Like
No, well,
Archie that.
that's Two-Face, and I will say this. I absolutely love the design of his lair. I
Gotta get to
We're
that.
talking
Yeah.
about Jubilee.
When we get to the bit where Riddler and Two-Face first meet, remind me to come back to that, because I want to talk about that scene in particular. Oh my
Yeah.
god.
Yeah.
But yeah. No,
But,
Two-Face's
but-
introduction.
yeah, go on.
Love it or hate it, Two-Face's introduction sets up what kind of movie this is going to be. I will say.
Indeed. And I actually really dug the intro though. Although to be fair, just seeing one time about Two-Face, I think my main issue with him is that he is Joker. He is Two-Face, but they make him to be like a Joker, kind of like a mixture of the Jack Nicholson
definitely
one
not
and
Two-Face.
the
He's
Right.
Because he only shows that dichotomy much later down, where you see Harvey kind of pop up in very small, like maybe 2 scenes. You get to see the Harvey Dent side of things, and
Yeah.
Harvey struggle with the whole Two-Face thing. So this is why I don't like this Two-Face at all. He's way too much of Joker, Riddler, everything that he's just not Two-Face.
Yeah, that's the issue. Like he's not this thing. But yeah, to me, I just always felt like he was channeling both Jack Nicholson's Joker and I forgot the actor's name. Please forgive me.
Cesar
who played
Romero.
Joker. Cesar Romero's Joker from the series, like that. Just want to run through that opening scene rather quick, right? So another character we introduce is Chase
The
Meridian.
audience doctor.
Oh boy.
Yes.
And here's the thing, this was my official introduction to Nicole Kidman, because if I was not mistaken, at the time when I was young, I kind of knew her in more adult R-rated films, not seeing that she starred in a lot of those. But yeah, to me as a kid, this was my introduction to her. So seeing her looking fine as hell, it's just like, wow, okay, this is one reason I can see this movie.
If
but
she was a real doctor, she would have lost her license years ago.
Yeah.
She has to be
Yeah, boy.
the thirstiest
thirsty.
doctor on the planet.
Yeah, it's like because as soon as Batman shows up.
Yes.
Well, by the way, I don't know, it's that thing about Val Kilmer's Batman. He has this gracefulness when he swoops down. You know what I mean? It's just something about the way how he swoops down, but it's so epic,
The
right?
cape. I think it's the cape, because the
It's the
cape does
cape,
that
it's the cape.
billowy thing
It's
whenever
the
he's.
cape. Yeah, it's a big
Yeah, it's
billowy
almost like
cape.
a kind of way he swoops down.
It's almost
And
like
then as-
Spawn's cape, really.
Yeah. And then as he lands, Chase says,
Hot entrance.
And then
Oh
from
God.
there, it's just this back and forth,
Oh
back
my
and forth.
God.
Also Commissioner Gordon is there, so while they're talking about what's going on, you know what I mean, it's like Batman and Chase are like finishing each other's sentences and all that kind of stuff. And you know, I like how Batman's played like, oh yeah, I've read your work. I mean, not naive, but you know, insightful. And she's like, what's it? She's like all obsessed about his rubber suit and his chest and all that kind of stuff. I always remember like when the movie came on back in '95, how they played on, oh my God, it's Nicole Kidman. She has the hots for
Right.
Batman. When you watch it now, it's kind of like, okay,
Again,
you just coming on way too hard on
a
this guy.
gay man directing a woman. This is what this is, right? Because it's like, okay, I'm thirsty for Batman, so she'll be thirsty for Batman too. It's not
Oh
in
yeah.
any way because she's not
Well-
professional at any point in this film.
No.
So
Yeah.
Well, and like going off that gay man directing Batman, I will also, because this came up recently in a couple articles where they were talking about Birds of Prey, when people were talking about the male gaze, right, and like how it
Yeah.
has become such an ugly part of the genre. I will make the count. I will always make the point that Batman Forever and Batman and Robin brings us what we very rarely see in superhero movies, which is the gay male gaze. So if you notice, like the way the camera moves around Chase Meridian in this movie, and then Barbara Pennyworth Gordon, I'm not sure.
Yeah, because
In the
she's
second,
not Barbara Gordon. She's not Barbara
yeah,
Gordon.
no, in
She's
the
Barbara
second film,
something. It's not Pennywood. She's Alfred's niece.
she's
Actually.
Alfred's niece, yeah. But like, if you look
Yeah.
at the way the camera moves around the two most prominent, and then like even Poison Ivy, and like looks around these two these female characters, compared to something like Elektra or the other X-Men movies or Catwoman,
Yeah.
like Schumacher is not nearly as interested in them. Meanwhile, all of the men, just about every single male character except the villains, is either wearing the anatomically correct Batman suit with prominent nipples and muscles and whatever, or they're shirtless. Like, look at Two-Face's henchmen for a minute. All these guys are running around in like sleeveless leather jackets
Yes.
with great big muscles. Like, they're very sweaty. They got these like kind of gimp suit masks on, except they're bright pink with like earrings and eyebrow piercings and lip piercings, and like and they are just the ones who like run around all the time with Two-Face. And like even the Gotham gangs, like women will be dressed fairly conservatively, and then all the dudes will be some way shirtless or some way like wearing like like it's a very, very rare, and like even at like a blockbuster in general, this is like a very rare example of like the gay male gaze, which is one of the things I kind of love about the Schumacher films upon rewatching them, is that, I mean, which it makes it an enjoyable experience for me.
Yeah.
I'm having a blast.
All right, so back to the action scene, right? So, you know what I mean, from the safe, now we have this moment where, you know, Two-Face escapes in this helicopter, and, you know, he has the safe actually attached to like a chain, and, you know, Batman does his thing, and the safe goes back in, so the security guard is safe, right? So then we get this Terminator 2S scene, so, you know, Batman's on the helicopter fighting Two-Face, right? And back then, I always wondered why or how Gotham has a Statue of Liberty.
A Statue of Liberty.
And it's like custom made.
Yeah.
So you see the word Gotham in neon. I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, like I know New York is one of
honestly
the
thought it was like a Las
archetypes of
Vegas
Gotham,
thing
but
where
it's
they
like,
have
why do?
like, you know, Las Vegas has like their own
Right.
version of the Eiffel Tower and stuff
Right,
like that.
right.
I thought it was something like that. I thought maybe did he get into like a Vegas version of the Statue of Liberty? Is that what's going
Right.
on? What, you
Yeah.
know? I
How
don't
can
know.
they afford that?
I know, right? Like you just want to be the best city in the US, right? You know, so let's have our own Statue of Liberty. To hell with New York, right? And of course,
All
Two-Face
these
being
other
Two.
statues all over the place, because now this is
Yeah.
a Gotham covered in statues, including those two
Yes.
giant rearing horses being held by like half-naked men in front of Wayne Manor now.
Yeah. And as far as Two-Face, you know, he escapes, and you know, him being theatrical, he actually delivers. Like, he has so much quotables in this.
Have the good taste to die. See ya.
So campy, so over the top, but I don't know, like that works in terms of what we get here with this movie, right? And of course, one of the shots that they just pumped into your brain because of the marketing behind the film, the shot of the helicopter rotors pretty much just spinning in front of the Statue of Liberty's face and then blowing up, right? I'll never forget, with the marketing for this film, that was just one shot that you just always remember, right? And of course,
Right.
Batman, survives, of course, because he's Batman. But in retrospect, I do like the fact, sorry, that like the very end where you saw how like the scarred face of the Statue of Liberty. I was like, oh, okay, that's it's a two-faced thing.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, all right. So moving on now, we're now introduced to Mr. Edward Nigma, played by Jim
Oh
Carrey.
dear.
Uh, and here's
Oh,
the thing, just right off the bat, as Riddler. I mean, well, remember this is the time where kids were pretty much introduced to Jim Carrey through the mask, and not so much through Ace Ventura, but through the mask, right? So yeah, seeing him here, it was just like, oh my god, it's Jim Carrey, it's so funny, right? What always kind of threw me off to watching it now is that this is like his first villainous role, though. And we still like him
Right.
because he is Jim Carrey, because we know he's zany and crazy. But yeah, the man's not a bad guy in this, though. And as kids, you wouldn't even think about that. It's just, oh, he's the Riddler, but they wouldn't really connect the dots. Like, he's kind of a dick, though. He's a bad guy here, right? Anyway, he is the.
There's a little trivia there too with the Riddler.
Uh-huh.
Apparently, Warner Brothers wanted Robin Williams.
Yeah,
Right.
I've heard that. I've heard that.
Yeah, but Williams was still bitter about the fact that they pretended they wanted him for Joker, so they could tell
Right.
Jack Nicholson that Robin Williams was interested in Joker, and that's how Jack
Right,
Nicholson
right.
became the Joker. So when they
Oh.
came back at him for Riddler, he was like, screw you guys, I'm going home, that kind of thing. So
Was that
that's
around
how
the
Jim-
time? Was that also around the time he was doing Genie for Disney, or was that a little later?
Uh,
No, yeah, Aladdin came before that.
I think Aladdin was before, yeah.
Yeah,
Aladdin was
92.
92. 92, yeah.
Right. Because I know
Yeah.
that like after he finished being the Genie, he wasn't really interested in blockbusters for a while because of the way
Right.
Disney, because of
Yeah.
the feud he had with Disney.
Right.
Yeah, but back to Edward Nigma, right? So yes,
Right.
he is the crazy cookie scientist who have this weird obsession with Bruce Wayne, because like you see a bunch of clippings and Time magazine
Do you think
covers
that's
and all that
where
kind of stuff. It's like
Amazing Spider-Man got it for Electro? Do you think that's what they
You
were
think-
doing?
Right. Yeah, pretty much.
It's gotta be.
I think he and Chase Meridian would have a Batman fan club, right?
right.
But that's the thing. That's like the theme of this movie, obsession. You have Chase
Yeah.
obsessed with
Right.
Batman. You have Nigma obsessed with Bruce Wayne. You
Yeah.
have Two-Face obsessed with killing Batman.
You have
You know,
Robin
everybody
obsessed
just-
with killing Two-Face.
Yes, everybody just
Right.
about
Obsession for men.
Yes, obsession.
Everybody here wants to fuck or kill everyone else. Everybody.
Yeah. Back then, I always felt it was kind of interesting that Edward would have this pre-Riddler bobblehead. I was like, okay,
Right.
because
That
you
was
think.
so weird. That
Yeah,
was
and then at
so
home he
weird.
has this big gigantic one that breathes this kind of mechanical breathing, and then always kind of
His
moves his
apartment
finger.
has no bathroom, no kitchen. What the hell kind of apartment is that? I was watching
I
it.
didn't
Just
even
one
look at
long
it as an
corridor.
apartment. I didn't even look at it as an apartment. I just saw it as like an office or something.
I
Where
have
is
no
he
idea.
I don't know what that was.
Yeah,
He
but
was living in a fun house or something. It was weird.
Which
something like
makes-
that, huh?
Which makes
But,
little sense because he's also a scientist working for Wayne Enterprises. Yet how is he living that poor?
Yes.
I know, right?
What is he putting all his money into?
Yeah, boy.
Red
but-
Bobby.
Bubbleheads, that's what.
Yeah, but speaking of Wayne Enterprises, right? So here's something that is only over the years it kind of dawned on me what makes this film so special, right? This is actually the first Batman film to really incorporate elements of sci-fi,
Right.
Hmm.
because you have
There's a big sci-fi plot.
we're coming in and talking about brain waves, the future.
Yeah,
It's brainwaves, and using this device that he may call the box, which is
And
like
it's shaped like
Yeah.
a phone.
Is that even
yeah,
safe? Is that
yeah.
even?
You
It
know.
looks more like a popcorn machine.
Why they
Or,
keep
or like a
calling it the
blender,
box
kind
is
of.
beyond me. It's not shaped like a box. That was so
Well, it's a
weird.
table box.
Well, that I know, right, right. Well, that's the point.
It looks like a
And you know,
blender.
like early cable
It does
guy.
look like a blender.
Yeah, it looks like a
Right.
blender, but you could see the whole early cable guy kind of vibe going on.
Right. It's very cyberpunk. It's very cyberpunk. You're right.
Yeah, so this whole thing with this notion that, oh well, you know, you pretty much extract brainwaves from people's brains and project it into, you know, 3D images, or
Well,
like I was looking at this like this is like early VR though. This is
Well,
early
here's
virtual
the weird
reality though.
thing. Here's the weird thing about the movie, and like rewatching it, this cracked me the hell up, because originally what Nigma is proposing to Bruce Wayne is that he's invented a machine that reads people's brainwaves and creates 3D images, right? But then it turns out that a side effect is that it's draining people's brainwaves, and
Yes.
I'm like,
Right.
what kind of a side effect is that? Like,
Yeah.
And it's a good thing that that well, you know, Val Kilmer as Bruce Wayne brings it up though. And you know, like I said earlier, I actually kind of like him. I actually like him as Bruce. I think that he
Yeah,
is
yeah,
better
I
as
definitely
Bruce
think he
than
does
Batman.
a good. He does a really solid job as the Bruce Wayne character, and it's actually this is where you see the intelligence of Bruce Wayne, because he's the first person when he says, "Well, I can, you know, make 3D images out of people's brainwaves," and Bruce is the first one to say, "Well, what stops you from extracting information from people's brains?" So
Yes, yes.
he
I
actually
love that
figured
moment
it could
actually.
do that before Enigma did.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I actually really do like that moment though. And you
It
kind of
just
see how
raises too many questions.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And you actually kind of see how reasonable he is as a Bruce Wayne. I think that's why I like him so much. You know, he's
I
not
definitely
like the
think-
asshole veneer Bruce Wayne that we get with like you know, Christian Bale. You know what I mean?
right, and like,
Or
even more so with Ben Affleck.
yeah, yeah,
Right.
yeah. It's like okay, I have a lot on my mind, but I'll show up. I'll listen to what you're saying. Okay, all right.
I'll give you the time
I'll
of day.
handle this. All right, cool. I want you all to like me. That's what it is. Like
He's a
trying
Bruce,
to
the
be
Bruce of the
respected
people.
and like. Yeah, 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 exactly.
And
But yeah, so but you know, right there, of course, you know, Bruce. Well, you know, the whole idea was that oh well, Edward would meet up with Bruce and he will talk more. But Bruce is like, no, this thing sounds crazy. Yeah, let's move on, right? And then you see like the early bit of like Nigma's psychosis where he says,
You were supposed to understand. I'll make you understand.
Like-
That seems like no sense. I'm kind of understand.
Yeah, it's Bruce who tells Nigma. Bruce tells Nigma that, okay, well, you know, send me the specs and so forth. And
Right.
Nigma like, well, no,
Yes.
I need the answer right now. I think I know.
Yeah. What?
yeah, I was just
This
like,
man,
okay, bro.
you know, they already
calm down.
partner.
then he's like,
I
well,
don't
okay,
understand.
then the answer is
So
no.
now it's no.
Yeah, exactly. But I don't understand. You could wait a week.
He could wait a day.
Yeah, I think
Exactly.
it was a day or a week or something like that. I can't remember. Yeah.
Yeah, whatever.
Right. Speaking of the whole sci-fi stuff, I don't know, maybe it's just me, but I find like, you know, when Bruce is in his office in the next scene and he's going into the Batcave, it is just so 90s sci-fi with the whole lock, chair, and you just
Oh,
see way down
yeah,
this sort of pipe
no.
thing. It just have this 90s
I-
sci-fi look to it.
That pneumatic tube, I have to understand how the hell he could build something like that. That's
I
insane.
know, right?
That going quite back to Wayne Manor, right?
Yes.
Yes.
All the way to
A
Wayne
long
Manor.
time.
It's like-
Holy shit, that's insane.
No,
Yeah,
but
who
the crazy
created
thing
this? Who
is
kept
that
it
the
on the-
code
Because-
to activate it is chair. So
No.
don't help anybody who sits in that chair. And
Alright, so Robot Chicken made fun of that, eh?
Oh, they did? Okay.
Robot Chicken had a bit with that when the maid was like sitting down and she was like, oh, I'm not, and the maid sat on the chair and the same thing happened. No, but here's my thing. If you could have something like that, I was like, well, why you don't just have like pneumatic tubes in and out of the city instead of getting the damn car? What's the point of the car?
True.
Dig the car, up to you.
No, but you're right,
That's
Ricardo,
so
because he
big
could
of a
have
gap.
that. He could still have that pipe thing go to where the bat signal is. You don't have to
Thank you.
drive all the way down there.
have the pipe next in Gotham PD, have the pipe in some key places like the Ace Chemicals and some other places, and dog, you can subscribe way faster than the car. Come on.
These
Ricardo,
chemicals,
Ricardo,
well,
chicks not seeing
yeah.
him in pneumatic tube. Chicks need to see him in the car. Chicks dig the car. That's what he
True,
said.
true, true that, true
Apparently.
that, true that. Speaking of that, right? So now we get the I use the bat signal to get you to come over so I can hopefully sleep with you scene.
Oh Lord.
Yes,
Yeah, what
because
the hell?
apparently
Oh Lord.
it's very easy for people to get to the roof of the Jeep Gotham PD and activate this thing.
Yeah.
How the
And
hell they can get up there?
she's in nightwear.
Yeah.
She's in evening wear. She's in lingerie or whatever it is. Like, what the hell?
Well, let's talk about the fact for a minute that like throughout this movie, it's either night or morning or or sunrise or sunset.
Right.
This entire
Yeah,
movie, there is never just like a normal day shot.
Regular day.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
even the scene when he's visiting Nigma's lab at Wayne Enterprises, there's a
Yeah.
sunset going on through the window. By the time he gets to the Gotham PD, the sun's down, and there she is
Right.
waiting for him,
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
I kind of love, but it's also absolutely ridiculous.
Right. So back to Batman chase. Of course, it's all sexually tense and all that kind of stuff. And then of course Batman drops the infamous.
It's the car, right? Chicks love the car.
And I remember that being part of the marketing as well too, because they just pump that in your head now. So when it comes up, like, I remember that, right?
Hey, there's the line.
And in retrospect, yes, it's the car. In case you want to know, yes, it's the car, right?
It's the car.
Yeah. And it's kind of funny about how Commissioner Gordon this kind of comes up like, hey, thought it was an emergency. It's like, no, everything's fine. You know what I mean? But during the whole banter between the two of them, I like that she brought up Catwoman, right? She talked about the type she did study the type of woman that Bruce was with earlier. It's like, oh well, would you prefer, leather and a whip? Like, okay, trying to continue the thing. Okay. I don't know, like as
Well, I
far
feel
as
like this is easily the most Freudian of all of the Batman films we've had.
yes,
Like of all 10 Batman movies we have had at this point, I think easily the most Freudian is this one, because this is the one where like literally like we're diving into Batman's psychology and like trying to figure out the whole duality of Bruce Wayne and Batman, and literally his love interest is a psychiatrist who's trying to crack the mystery of like both of them, even though she doesn't realize they're the same person.
Yeah, until later on, right? You're right.
Right. But yeah, easily it's wild.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering if Schumacher was trying to kind of emulate the same kind of sexual tension with Catwoman and Batman from Batman Returns,
Right.
Yeah.
without them having more of a kind of equal footing and similar psyches. He's just like, well, okay, we had a lot of sexy bantering, so I'll be sexy bantering. Hey, Catwoman had,
Right.
she had a power structure as well too, so it was a little more balanced, and you had the fighting and the fighting, so it works there. Whereas here it's just kind of, it's like a high school boys porn fantasy,
Yeah.
I'm the doctor.
Right. No.
It doesn't work. No.
The doctor's here to see you now. But
Yeah.
yeah. But
You want to lie down with the cow?
But here's the thing, what I always could never understand about this movie here in particular, Jen, is that you have someone like Nicole Kidman right there, right? And yet in the next movie, he's with, who is this? Elle McPherson, whatever her face is, who's like in the movie like about like 5 minutes or like 2
I
scenes in the
barely
movie.
remember her.
Nobody remembers
Yeah.
her. I remember. I saw like I watched Batman. I was like, wait, who's this?
And I still don't remember her.
She was incredibly bland and underused, I should say, in that movie. But so it's like, what going on there? Anyway, so right, so as I was talking about with Jim Carrey being Riddler, and when he's young, it's like, oh my God, Jim Carrey, he's so funny. The moment with him and his boss though, like that goes from campy to like a acid trip to just downright dark though in like a matter of like minutes straight.
With
And
the
it is
sound
funny
effects,
that
too. It's just ridiculous.
yeah, Jim Carrey just goes off in the scene. Like, well, basically what happens is that he has the box, the kind of helmet thing. So he puts one on, he puts it on his boss, and his boss is just seeing all these images and going off. And Jim is sucking. Well, Edward is sucking the brainwaves out of him, and it's just Jim just going off. And I mean, there's even a moment where he's like doing this sort of crazy little jig and whatnot. And when I was watching, it was like, this is clearly why they cast him to be in Sonic the Hedgehog. He plays pretty much that crazy scientist. There's even a moment in Sonic where he does a dance to his song. I'm like,
Yeah.
This is it. This is where it came from.
Oh man. No, and like I feel like more than almost anyone else in the cast, Jim Carrey is on exactly the same wavelength as Joel Schumacher.
True, very
Yeah.
true.
Yeah.
Like
It's
he
just,
and Schumacher
it's
are
he's
like,
a wild animal and just let him go wild. Just let him do it once.
oh yeah, everyone else is like maybe checking with Schumacher for notes on the different scenes. Carrey is like, all right, what are we doing today? And Schumacher has even said in interviews that a lot of what they did with Carrey was like giving him a general impression of what they were doing and then just kind of letting him, like trusting in him to understand what he's supposed to be doing. I think.
Yeah.
What was what Schumacher's? I saw an interview Schumacher was saying about working with Carrey.
Yeah, and he seems to be the one having the most fun in the movie.
Oh,
Yeah.
easily.
Yeah.
He's
Everybody
having a
else kind of
blast
in
in
the-
the show.
Absolute blast.
Now my brain's connected to yours. He's just going off, but you know what I mean? But it's fun to watch, but like, as a kid, once again, knowing Jim Carrey being this comedian, right? It's kind of weird. It's kind of like when you're young, you don't even realize that, oh my God, this man legit kills his boss afterwards. In this really
Throws him out of
dark way.
window.
Yes, he throws him out. And then he
throws
looks out, he's like,
Oh,
ooh,
son.
sharp landing and all that kind of stuff, Trent. It's like,
Like
he did that.
He,
And they're like looking at this guy laughing at all the, the little quips he's doing, but the man just killed his boss, though. Like, come on, right?
like when you look at the scene, like it tells you a lot about Enigma as a character because originally his boss is tied to the swivel chair and like he's still got the brainwave contraption on his head, and so he pushes him at the window. And originally it looks like, oh shit, he's gonna push him out the window, and then he breaks through the window, and at first he's stuck because he's still got the thing on his head, and the damn head thing is plugged into the wall. So then Enigma walks up and is like, oh wait, and then he takes it off his head with some ball.
And takes it off and he falls.
I need that back, and then he just lets him fall, and I'm like, damn.
like that is dark, like darkly funny, but at the same time, it's Jim Carrey. Like you like as a kid, you wouldn't know, you didn't really process. Oh, Jim Carrey, the guy who started the mask, is really a villain here. Wow, you know what I mean? So yeah, props to Jim Carrey for actually doing that role for one thing, because we wouldn't have had Cable Guy and other roles where he got dark, right? Pretty much. So next scene pretty much is where you talk about Ricardo, where but it's not actually Two-Face watching the video. It's Bruce and Alfred watching a news report of, oh, Harvey Two-Face is out. You know what I mean? Armed and extremely dangerous. The backstory, or at least the way how he becomes Two-Face, is bullshit. Like, okay, for one thing, right? Courtroom trial, right?
I have never seen
big
a
mobster.
court trial shot like that before. That's insane.
Some Don Maloney, whatever his name is, right? And
Falcone.
Falcone.
It's Falcone.
No. His name in the movie wasn't Falcone. It was something else. I remember that.
Okay.
It's funny it wasn't Falcone. Could have been Falcone, but whatever. But yeah, so he's about to. I think it was either him or like one of his goons was about to throw some acid, and Batman, who is in the courtroom.
Right, for some
like,
reason.
He's like hiding in the background. He's like behind a pillar in the shadows, just like, I am the knight.
Yeah, like what he was going up on trial too. He was going to answer questions.
No, but here's the thing. This is given as the reason as to why Two-Face hates Batman so much, because he did not prevent it from happening or whatever. But it's such a weak explanation for why he hates him so much. I mean, the whole entire thing is just stupid and lazy.
Yeah, and that scene and that little reporting is just like about like 10-15 seconds, and that's all to know about why Two-Face is the way he is, right?
And like literally, it's like what I said when we talked about Revenge of the Sith a few weeks back. It's one of those cases where trying to explain it actually makes it weaker.
Yeah.
Like, was anyone sitting there in the theater being like, why does Two-Face hate Batman so much? Or I don't know, maybe it's like he's a criminal and like Batman is trying to stop him because he's a superhero. No, we have to explain it. And the explanation is just this weak origin story thing.
Yeah.
especially when you already have, you know, the Riddler running around having a full blown, like, fully fleshed out origin story. Yeah, an actual arc. Why even bother trying to explain?
That's that's what I hated about this. Is that if anybody should have got the arc, it's Two-Face, which I hated. I hated that.
And he is the more complex of the two villains. I mean, it's duality, right?
Exactly.
Which is a team in the movie. So why give him 10 seconds of backstory? I don't know. Because, so that's a flaw with the movie for sure.
I have heard rumors. I think if you look on the Wikipedia, it goes into this in more detail. But apparently, some of the stuff that got left on the cutting room floor was Two-Face material.
Oh,
I've heard that there was a little bit more intended to kind of like go into the background for Two-Face, but that was considered some of the darker stuff, and that was a lot of stuff that ended up on the cutting room floor. Was what I heard.
Okay.
Because how many versions of this film are there? It's two, right? A theatrical version and an extended cut, right?
I think so. I think there may be
I don't think there is. Well, okay, there are deleted scenes, but I don't think there's an extended cut of the. There's actually no extended cuts of the first four or any of the Batman movies, with the exception of
this was a very
BTS,
different.
right?
Well, we have to remember this was a very different time as far as like superhero blockbusters go, right? These were not films being made by to be fair, Burton and Schumacher are auteur filmmakers, but they were definitely the problem with when you're making a superhero movie, it's not really your property quite as much. So there's less. I mean, it's definitely a little bit different now. Like, again, we get the whole thing. Like, we've recently got the announcement that the Snyder Cut is coming. But I definitely feel like at the time, especially in the 90s, there's less of this idea that there needs to be director's cuts. And I think Schumacher also said he was fine with the version that ended up in theaters, but there was a lot of darker stuff left on the cutting room floor.
Right. Okay. So then we get the first riddle, because Nigma throws a bunch of riddles at Bruce because obsession, all that jazz, right? And this was, let me just read it here. If you look at the numbers on my face, you would find 13 any place. When you're a kid, it's like you're so deep in the show, you're just like, okay, I will just wait and see when Bruce or whoever it is figure it out. When you watch it, I was like, it's a clock, duh. Come on.
Can we just talk about how simple these riddles are?
Yes.
There is one that was kind of tricky, but I'll get to that in a bit.
So this thing with the whole this is something we'll address later, but they will do this kind of weird broken. If anybody remember that scene in Black Dynamite, and there's a scene in the 66 Batman. There's a scene in the
where they stop
that does the same nonsense.
Yeah, they stop and they have this elaborate. Okay, well, there's 13 letters here, so
logic.
The 13th letter is M or whatever it is, and they have this whole long minute, analysis of what's going on. Right.
It actually reminds. Go ahead.
It's complete moon logic, eh? Complete moon logic, but it's like that 2066 film. 2066 stuff.
I won't be. Yes. Because they always have moments where Batman and Robin and the Batman figure things out, and then they will jump to the Batmobile, right? Yeah. Speaking of that, though, we have to talk about them Dutch angles, boy.
Oh man, I have that in my notes.
Okay.
While I was taking notes, the first two words I wrote was Dutch angles.
Okay, let's be clear. Cinema can be divided into two eras. The entire history of cinema can be divided into two eras: pre-Battlefield Earth and post-Battlefield Earth.
Yes.
This was pre.
Or BE for short.
So for those of you at home, the Dutch angle is if you're ever watching a movie and you're watching a film angle that's just a little bit like if you're watching a movie, there's an angle where it's not straight, like the line of vision. Right, it's a skew. What the movie? You don't see it a lot in movies because although I was rewatching the Marvel Thor and there's actually a surprising number in that movie, but
Yeah.
But
Kenneth Branagh used quite a lot of, well, not a lot, but quite some Dutch angles in that
given
show.
that, especially in a post-Battlefield Earth role, because because again, for those of you at home, Battlefield Earth was the movie that single-handedly killed the Dutch angle as a technique.
Yep.
Like no one, because that entire movie was shot in Dutch angles.
Yep.
Yeah.
And after that, no filmmaker wanted to they're almost embarrassed to use Dutch angles anymore after that movie.
Yeah, they put it bed after that.
It was like, and again, that's why it's shocking to see as many as there are in Kenneth Branagh's Thor, because no one. So then you go back to a happier time before Battlefield Earth, and you're watching Schumacher's Batmans, and you're like, huh.
Yeah.
Back when we didn't pay any mind as to why. Okay, this is a nice little shot for this little opening sequence. Okay, but we use it again in this scene and again
like
in this
what
scene.
Michael Bay did with 360-degree,
Mm-hmm.
cameras.
Right.
Like you can't help but notice it now to the point, and that thing where he loves to shoot people from a low angle, and it's like, okay, Michael Bay had something to do with this movie. It's just that's how it is with Dutch angles now. It's like it's in your face. You can't help but notice it.
Well, I feel like I saw there's a brilliant essay by Patrick Willems called Michael Bay Understanding an American Auteur Parts 1 and 2, and he talks about how the 90s was really we've been touching on this for this entire review, but the 90s was really the rise of the really stylized blockbuster.
Mm-hmm.
Like this was the rise of Michael Bay, and this was the golden age of Tony Scott. Right.
Yes.
So like
the late great Tony Scott, by the way.
The late great Tony Scott. Here we got all these movies that are like really expensive looking camera work, heavy color saturations, a lot of crazy angles, and explosions. So many goddamn explosions. Like I feel like in the 90s you would just get just like explosions or your money back was the blockbuster promise of the 90s, honestly.
All right, so they bring in a pretty interesting subplot involving Bruce Wayne and him having pretty much demons. So he's having all these memories involving his parents' murders and all that kind of stuff, which of course the first movie touched on, right? So of course he goes by Chase, to find out what's going on, and also he gets a second riddle, which is tear one off and scratch my head. What once was red is black instead. And then, when you're young, it's like, okay, let me wait and hear where it is. Okay, I expected it to be something really complex. It's a match. And when I heard that in this movie, I was like, ugh. And just how quickly they figured out, both him and both Bruce and Chase, like, it's a match. It's like,
it's a match. It reminds me, the riddles in this always remind me of there's a whole, because the Riddler is a villain in the Adam West Batman movie too, and there's my favorite scene in that movie is when the Riddler leaves a riddle for Batman, and Batman goes to the Batcave to talk to Robin about it. And he's like, Robin, see if you can hear these two riddles and see if you interpret them as I do. Okay. Yes. Okay. Sure, Batman. Right. What has yellow skin and writes? Right. A ballpoint banana. Right. 2. What people are always in a hurry? Rushing people. Russians. Right, Robin. Now, combine both answers. Rushing people. Bananas. I've got it. Someone Russian is going to slip on a banana peel and break their neck. Precisely, Robin.
Yeah. No, that's it's the same logic. I'm thinking about total moon logic.
Yeah. Oh my God.
This is definitely Frank Gorshin Riddler. This is not the Riddler from the animated series or the
not
This is not brilliant Riddler.
And way far from the Riddler that we got with Gotham, right? The series.
Oh, that's the best Riddler ever.
Yeah.
The one from Gotham. I absolutely adore his version because when you read the comics, I mean, a lot of people think Riddler is just like Joker, but he's not. It's a completely different character who thinks he's the smartest guy in the room, even if he isn't. And I do like that we do get that here to some extent with the Riddler basically trying. He has a plan and he's trying to utilize Two-Face to carry out that plan. That's when I get to see the version of the Riddler that I'm familiar with.
Right.
But then we get Jim Carrey being all over the top and going more into Joker-esque territory than the Riddler.
what are your thoughts on? I think is it Paul Dana who's been cast as him in the Matt Reeves movie
Paul
that's coming
Dano,
up?
yeah.
I
Paul
think
Dano.
that's
Yeah, Paul Dano.
Paul Dano.
I
Paul
think
Dano.
I think that's a strong choice, and I think if they're going in the direction of what we got to see with Gotham, that's a Riddler I want to see.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. So let's talk about the circus scene.
Oh boy.
The circus sequence, sorry, right? So even from when I saw it for the first time to now, right? I always felt like this was the approach that Joel, or one of the approaches Joel had to this movie. I wanted to be like you're going to a circus. I wanted to be grand and not operatic, sorry, and colorful and just large than life tread and
Spectacle.
spectacular. Yeah, spectacle. Just overall the color palette for this movie I really dug, right? The bright colors and all that jazz, right? But this scene in particular, I really, really do like the colors that they bring up here. Right? Of course, Bruce invites Chase because and then we bring up probably one of the most annoying characters in the show. Is one of those blink and you miss her characters, Gossip Gertie.
Yeah.
Oh
I
yeah.
hate this
She
character.
shows up again in Batman and Robin.
Yes,
Yeah.
she shows up. And her sole purpose in the movie is just to say, "Oh my God, we Gotham's elite, and here's Bruce Wayne. Who is
Yeah.
She's literally there.
Gotham's
She's-
Bachelor gonna
she's-
be with tonight?"
She
Like,
is yet
why?
another character who is there to establish how badly everyone wants to bang Bruce Wayne. That is like
Yeah.
she's one of the
Yes.
characters.
That's the thing, though. Everybody in this movie acts like they're in mid-orgasm because everybody's reaction is like, "Oh my God, Bruce Wayne!"
Bruce
and
Wayne!
Batman. Oh,
Gotham's
Yeah,
most
boy.
eligible bachelor. Like,
what is
and
wrong
like-
with everybody? And it's all the characters, the
be
male
fair-
characters, the
okay,
female
although-
characters.
exactly. Like this is why do we not have more like? I want to know why more bisexuals aren't talking about this movie because like because this is like everyone, regardless of gender, agrees on one thing that they want to bang Val Kilmer's Batman. And to be
Yep.
fair, the way Joel Schumacher shoots him and Val Kilmer plays it, I can't blame them. I love it so much. But yeah,
Yeah.
Gossip Gertie.
Yeah, I just hate the character. I hate it even more in Batman Robin, right? But similar to that, there is always some kind of larger life set piece. There's always like this big operatic music playing and all that kind of stuff, right? But in this case here, this is where we're introduced to the Flying Graysons, right? And of course,
Yeah.
the youngest Dick Grayson, played by Chris O'Donnell. Where's
The
he now?
youngest, oldest 25-year-old boy.
You know?
Oh my God.
Right?
Oh my
Shall really cast younger for this shit.
Man's supposed to be a teenager. The man is like clearly in his
Huge.
20s, bro.
Well,
Like,
not
come on.
even teenager. He has to be under 18, where the child services has to put him
Right.
on adoption.
Exactly.
Obviously, a big
Exactly.
man.
What get me about this is,
Adopts a grown ass man. I am
Yeah.
Well,
Well,
people that off.
this reminds me of the critic bit with his Kevin. We leave Kevin at home, 23 years old, in Home Alone 4.
Oh, I remember that.
Yeah.
I remember.
Yeah, it's that. I like, what is this? He's so big. But another thing that's kind of weird about this is that he has a brother in this. I'm like, what? Which
Yes,
version does he have a
yes.
brother? Why cast that person? Who's that person?
Because the family, the Flying Graces, couldn't be three members. That'd be four,
It's
bro.
just the fair.
But-
That's why
but-
he has two
but-
parents.
But to be fair, why couldn't I have a sister instead of a brother? I don't know.
Well, I don't know. My thing is he have a sibling at all. Why does he have a sibling at all?
No, I know.
Well, I mean, they do work it in with his whole Robin story, and then one of the punches.
Oh, right, with the helmets,
This is
right.
for my
Yeah.
brother, They
Right.
work
Right.
4 punches, I guess.
Which
So.
could have been his dad.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, I'll admit though, right? The acrobatic scenes with the Flying Graysons, still thrilling to watch. Like I love those shots. I love the slow mo with like the dad
Right.
flipping in the air and all that kind of stuff, and the top view
And the
shots.
powder.
Yeah, the powder. I mean, it's great.
Mhm.
It's great filmmaker, right? I do love how I was about to say Tommy Lee Jones, how Two-Face kind of shows up midway, like, hey, in case whatever happened to me, yes, I'm gonna show up, right? And there's a thing that shows up in this movie with him. Like every time there is a meeting of Gotham's elite, he shows up with his goons. And he's always like planning to blow something up or threaten people. So in this case, he shows up as like, oh, I want Batman bruised, bleeding, you know what I mean? Or, you know what I mean? One of you guys must know who Batman is, right? Of course, everybody goes into a panic.
Also,
And
moment I
okay,
hated, moment
I like from a character perspective, Bruce
There's a
Wayne stand up and
moment-
say, you know what I mean? Two-Face, I'm Batman. And you know what I
And
mean? Like
nobody
he's
hears
lost in the
him,
crowd.
including
Yeah.
the two
Yeah.
people.
I hate
That is a
bit.
great moment. That's a
It's,
powerful
yeah,
moment.
but it's
It's
such
just
a
it's just
stupid thing because he's standing right next to Chase. I don't care how loud
that's
that
the problem.
sickness is. She should have heard him, and then he's standing next to Gossip Gertie, and she
Right.
doesn't hear.
Yes.
How is that possible? Nobody heard him say that.
How much noise is going on in this damn circus tent?
Thank you.
Like
It's
how
not a
much?
rave.
Like
It's not a rave. It's like it's a circus.
I know, right? But people just lose their
No
shit
one
and
has
run, and you're not
speakers.
hearing him.
And the thing is, and I mean, without a second thought, he just jumps up and really reveals his secret identity. There's no struggle. He's just like, who's
Yes.
Batman? I'm Batman.
yeah, he
Yeah,
Think about
yeah.
it.
remember when it was like a big deal that Alfred let Vicky Vale into the Batcave in the first movie,
Yes.
and then in this movie, and then the second movie where he and Catwoman spend the entire film dancing around their identities, only for him to literally rip his mask off to reveal who he is,
Mhm.
and then like this movie stands up like fucking I am Spartacus, like
Yes.
I am
Yes.
Decimus
Yeah.
Meridius, the Dark Knight of Gotham.
And he continues the motif by doing martial arts in front of everybody. It's like, really?
Yeah. Just pretty
This
much
Batman is
fighting
dumb. I'm
Two-Face's
sorry,
goons.
dumb. This Batman is dumb. He is dumb.
Yes.
Yeah.
He just
Not
doesn't
bright.
think twice with certain decisions. He just acts. That's the problem, right?
Yeah.
While all this is going on, pretty much Two-Face has this plan. He has this big, bomb and whatnot. This
because of
Bull-
course he does.
volleyball-esque thing with sticks of dynamite in it. Of course, it
Yeah.
has a timer because it's Batman forever, right? So yeah,
Again, another campy Batman 66 thing, with that classic
Yeah.
Batman running with the bombs.
yeah,
and
running
thing.
with the bomb thing. Yes.
They're always
So
like-
I was
Yeah, they're
wondering
always these
if
big
that was a
black
reference to that scene or not.
Probably.
Yeah, probably. But
Oh,
right.
it's-
But I do like the fact that Dick Grayson actually is the one who okay, he tells his family, I can handle it, right? You guys try to get out of here. I do like the fact that he actually takes the bomb out and put it on the roof and roll it down and it falls into the ocean, blows up. I like that, right? However,
another
though his
explosion,
family
but yeah.
gets sorry.
and then we get another explosion, but yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but
Because
it's
again-
not the
That
water,
bomb
it's
has
not
the slowest timer on it possible because I don't know how. I think it had like maybe 10 seconds left on it when he reached the roof, and yet
he
it
reached the
managed
roof,
to roll
yes.
down and hit the water and explode without mashing up the tents or anything. It's like, okay.
Yeah. I remember that. Yeah, but unfortunately, though, Dick's family is killed because they were pretty much on the cables actually to the top of the circus tent, and Two-Face, that a-hole, just shoots it, and all three of them fall to the death. I actually thought that was like a really nice moment. Well, a great shot actually, seeing all three of them just laid out on the floor, and just seeing like the attendees just walk slowly towards their bodies. Like I thought that was like a really, really great shot, right?
Yeah.
So next scene pretty much is Commissioner Gordon pretty much assigning Bruce the task of taking care of poor young Dick because his family is dead, right? And
Dick
it's kind of funny that
Grayson.
let's just give him to Bruce because Bruce is that playboy bachelor. He has nothing else to do with his
He's
life, right?
got
So
endless room.
yes, and he does own clean manner, right? So yeah,
This is another thing though that I have issue with. Not, but besides the fact that he's like the oldest orphan ever, but the way he talks to Alfred and Bruce, he acts like he's known them for years. He's like calling Alfred Al, and it's just something about it feels like we missed an entire scene prior
Yep.
to that.
You missed
it's
the
meant
entire
to
movie.
he's trying to be charismatic. So it's just
And
like, hey Al, you know what I mean? Like,
He's
yeah,
just coming
yeah.
across as his namesake. He's just being a giant dick. So
Yeah.
And complete side note, and going off again, gay male gaze. I love how Dick Grayson in this movie is basically the missing member of the Lost Boys from Schumacher's earlier film. Like he's got like the one earring and either leather or denim pants. He's got like the leather jacket with the collar turned up. Like, oh my god, like it's
motorcycle.
Yeah. No, it's absolute perfection.
Yeah, but touching on Dick again, right? So I was like when Gordon drives off, it's just like, all right, yeah, guys, I had to go. It's like, yeah, I'm gonna find Two-Face and I'm gonna kill him, right? And of course, this brings up another theme in the film, which is the idea of vengeance. Like, oh, you know what I mean? If you kill Two-Face, then what? You know what I mean? Which is a theme I actually dug in this film now, which the film explored a little deeper, but I mean, it's a summer blockbuster, right? So you can't really put kids to sleep with moments like that, right? But let me just talk briefly about the true MVP in this movie, boy. Alfred. Alfred is such Yoda-ish character in the show. Be respectful to Michael Go here. Because he just always has the right things to say. Like from the moment when this scene basically where Alfred brings some food for Dick, is like, nah, I won't be needing that. I'm heading out, right? And Alfred's like, okay, fine, I'll just throw it out then. I guess the dogs are hungry, you know what I mean? And Dick has to change a heart now. And even there's another moment where he says,
broken wings mend in time. One day Robin will fly again.
Like the man just always knows the right things to say. Yeah, Alfred is the MVP in this movie.
Shout out to Michael Go, I think is how you pronounce that name.
Go.
Who's one of the only actors who stuck it out through all 4 Batman films.
Yes.
Up there with Pat Hingle as Commissioner Gordon.
Yes. Right. So then we get a silly but still entertaining as hell scene, just mainly because the marketing for this film push it. This is where Two-Face has this great scene where he pulls out this rocket launcher and tries to shoot at the Batmobile, and so hits one of his goons. But the key moment, when you look at it now, it's really corny, is when of course the Batmobile lifts off, and he uses the grappling hook and he's driving up a wall, dude, and it's a shot where
how he got down. That's the part I'm curious
they never show it. They never show he got back down, right? But I'll never forget the marketing. They will always show you that shot of the Batmobile driving up the wall and the explosion behind it. Yeah, and it just this is so stupid, but I love it though. I don't know.
Right,
it's a dumb fun moment, but I love this scene.
It's like peak campy Silver Age goofiness, right? It's like the goddamn
right
shark repellent
music. The
spray.
music is so goofy too, and it fits it well. Yeah.
Like, I will argue that, like, one of the things about these movies that I do love is that they have their own internal logic. Like, they may not obey the rules of logic in our world, but these movies definitely have their own internal logic.
Yeah, they do. Guys, any quick thoughts on that cheese scene at all? You're like, you'll think it's trash.
I have no idea where Batman was going, why he was being chased, what the crime. It just starts. This scene just starts. There's nothing.
Yeah, it does start with him just driving, just driving, just because he's not going anywhere. He's patrolling.
Right?
He's
and
patrolling.
Then dressing up like a grandmother. I mean, at the end of the day, the Two-Face I know wouldn't even bother with doing something like that. He would have just been standing in the road with a rocket launcher.
That's more of a Joker kind of move.
Yes, definitely. But I do like the the wheels turning sideways thing. I mean, it is what it is.
Yeah. Ricardo, any quick thoughts on that cheese scene?
Yeah, it was seen that when he climb up the thing, right?
Yeah, he drives up the wall of the
Yeah, you could see on its own again, Two-Face, he be too goofy. I mean, ridiculous. By the way, the dark kind of rip off the whole side wheel thing.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah.